They're the women who take their own lives, hidden victims of domestic abuse. Finally being counted, but what chance of justice?
I've lost my best friend, I've lost my sister, she was my go-to person.
Katie Reed's sister Alex, seen here on the left, fell in love, fell victim to domestic violence and took her own life, all in the space of 8 short months.
Completely changed from this bright, bubbly girl. It was very quick, because our face, when she first met him, she was really happy. And it was like a love bombing effect. And then, as soon as they lived together, that was it. Changed from that day.
Katie says her sister, a community nurse, became withdrawn and isolated. In the end, unable to hide the physical abuse.
Alex came to my house, face covered in blood. She'd come to my house because he'd smashed up her mobile, so she couldn't contact anyone.
That's the worst you'd seen her?
Yeah.
Alex's partner was arrested. A week later, she'd taken her own life. The family wanted her partner prosecuted for manslaughter. He was eventually convicted of 2 charges of assault and 1 of criminal damage and sentenced to 6 months in jail.
Months of abuse, which happened very quickly, had took her to that point of there's no way out other than to do what she did. That link needs to be investigated. There's definitely a link there, and it happens all the time, and it's not reported. As I say, if she hadn't have met him and hadn't have suffered that abuse, she'd still be here today.
Of course he would deny that.
Yeah, because that's the type of person that he is. Yeah.
Katie Reed is not alone. Campaigners say an increasing number of families who've lost sisters or daughters to suicide want police to pursue convictions against their former partners. They say the link between domestic violence and suicide must be taken much more seriously by the criminal justice system. Professor Jane Monckton-Smith has been studying the role of domestic violence in hundreds of suicides for the Home Office. She says police and the entire justice system must take a much more forensic approach when women take their own lives.
We need to treat all sudden unexpected deaths that are related to domestic abuse, including suicides, as suspicious and as crime scenes at the earliest possible stage. If they don't treat that as a crime in the first very, very early stages, we're not going to be able to get the necessary evidence for a conviction. And I can tell you from, I work with a lot of these cases, the evidence is very, very often there.
There is a legal precedent, an extraordinary case from 2017, still thought to be the only successful prosecution of its kind. Nicholas Allen pleaded guilty to the manslaughter of his former partner Justine Rees, accepting that his onslaught of threats and abuse had led her to take her own life.
We got friends and family who noticed a significant deterioration over what was a relatively short period of time. It was only 15 months from the start of their relationship. She was a happy, bubbly lady, and she was described as skeletal by the end. And also we'd got a barrage of thousands of phone calls that were made from Nicholas Allen to Justine.
You don't want to give false hope to families, for example, who've lost their loved ones to suicide, who may want prosecutions of their partner because of domestic abuse. But your case proves it is possible.
We all know of people who have potentially fragile mental health issues, but of course we can't take that into consideration. It has to be the actions of the perpetrator that cause that person to take their own life.
Sarah, who can't be identified for legal reasons, says her daughter Florence was found dead after months of domestic abuse.
There was no professional curiosity from the crews that rocked up at that house, despite the fact they'd been at that house just 14 days before, when the neighbours had called the police and said they were fearful for her life. With a row that went on for over 4 hours with lots of violence, lots of awful stuff. They then witnessed him trying to drag her out of her car by her hair.
Sarah says at inquest, domestic violence must be officially recorded in suicide verdicts for the sake of those left behind, like Florence's children.
They need to know the truth, that Mummy did not kill herself. Mummy is dead as a result of something that happened to her.
What do you think about when you remember her?
The type of person that she was just lovely.
In response to our report, the Safeguarding Minister Victoria Atkins said she was acutely aware of the issues raised. Where a victim has taken their own life and the circumstances give rise to concerns, a domestic homicide review must be considered.
And if you've been affected by any of the issues in Jackie's report there, you can find organisations which offer help by going to channel4.com/support.